Hi, Julianne. How are you doing? It's just great to see you today.
Great seeing you too.
I really think this is going to be a great experience. Hi, I'm Dr. Gerry Fishkin.
Hi, I'm Julianne Goode.
And welcome to Psyched. I hold a PhD in clinical psychology and have been in practice as a psychotherapist since 1970. I'm the author of 4 books, including my most recent, The Science of Shame and Its Treatment. And I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Ms. Julianne Goode.
Thank you, Gerry. I'm Julianne Goode, marriage and family therapist intern. I'm the former host of Psyched One-on-One on iTunes Store. I've been practicing psychology for 6 years. My specialties are in trauma resolution and dual diagnosis substance abuse.
Well, now that you've met us, I want to talk a bit about what our mission statement is and what our mission here and our goals at Psyched. It is our goal at Psyched to bring psychology to the masses in a positive, health-oriented way, and to demystify and destigmatize therapy, and to encourage you, our audience, to experience greater self-understanding. It is our goal and intent to bring to you the most interesting guests that speak directly to you and your needs without psychobabble, in an honest and understanding way.
What's trending? On today's show, we're going to be talking about positive psychology and how it can improve your daily happiness. Next, we're going to be talking about New Year's resolutions and goal setting with Dr. Gregory Canillas. He is our special guest today. And then later on, we're going to have as our musical guest, Michael Espinach, also known as Breatherrr.
So positive psychology is our theme today. And what is positive psychology? Well, those of us that work in the area of psychotherapy and treatment are dealing primarily with psychological, personality, and emotional issues. But positive psychology is different. Here we're talking about enhancing the strongest characteristics of who we are and who we want to be. And we're not pathologizing here. We're giving a positive approach. The reason you're watching us is because you want to learn something more about yourself in a positive and a realistic way. And that's what the purpose and goal of this show is all about. So here we go. Julianne, take it away.
So one of the important elements of positive psychology is having a healthy sense of self-esteem. Self-esteem is a really important element of positive psychology.
Sure is.
Self-worth is important to get up in the morning, right? You have to have a certain amount of drive and self-love in order to function. So, but too low a self-esteem can lead to depression. It can lead to people using and abusing you. And too much of it can lead to entitlement and almost narcissism sometimes, right? So getting a healthy sense of this is who I am to me, this is really important.
Another element of positive psychology, in my view, is optimism. And when I think of optimism versus pessimism. Now, too many of us, and especially those suffering with low self-esteem, don't really look forward to the future. They're not optimistic. Everything they see is just like a blank wall. It's just happening right now. So I think we need to have optimism to motivate us. We have to have, it's like the goal ahead of us. It's like the carrot in front of the mule or donkey, if you will. It keeps us moving forward. Versus pessimism, how many of us or how many people suffer a very pessimistic outlook? Oh, things aren't going to work out. Oh, it's the other shoe is going to fall. And all of that. Well, that gets us to thinking like that's the end. It's a dead end. There's no place to go. I think we have to maintain a positive orientation, a positive outlook. So for each of you out there, check yourself. Check how optimistic you are versus where you are on a pessimism, negativity scale. And if you find that you're leaning more toward the negativity, you really start to take a look at, you need to have a look at what's keeping you there. What's driving your negativity in keeping you from feeling optimistic and looking forward to the future in a positive and self-affirming way. Julianne.
So the next element is self-efficacy. It's doing it yourself. It's pushing yourself. It's motivation and confidence and feeling that need to go and push yourself a little bit harder. You need to have this in order to accomplish tasks and goals. That feeling inside of you like, I can do this. I know I can do this. Even if there's just a small voice inside of you that keeps growing with every day and every moment of just trying to be in there and be your own cheerleader.
I think another element of positive psychology in my book is positive illusions versus anticipatory anxiety. How many of us maintain a sense of dread about the future versus living in the now, having positive illusions? You see, I think it's positive illusions that move us forward, that move our project, whatever it is, forward. And I think what we're going to see with Dr. Canillas is that by maintaining a very goal-oriented and positive approach, and especially in the new year, we can anticipate a healthy outcome. But when we anticipate anything into the future, the outcome is always negative. So I think positive illusions means we have to stay in the moment, in the present, and really work toward that. Because the minute we leave now and go into the future, we're going to feel anxiety. It's built into us. Just like our brain and our body is telling us how to be, anxiety is always about the future. So we want to stay in the moment.
In the here and now as much as possible.
I think it's difficult to accomplish, but if we can do that, we're ahead of the game.
Right, exactly. I agree. Thank you, Gerry.
You're welcome.
So another important element is gratitude. Feeling grateful for every little thing that comes along that is beneficial to your life. So many times we have positive things that happen in our lives and we just brush them aside. We don't even think twice about that. But when something negative comes up, then we're like going, oh, complain. But just take a time to get into what am I thankful for today? Just small things. The beauty of the sky, the laughter of our children. Anything like that is going to help us.
So gratitude, Julianne, is really about being grateful for what we have, not for what we don't have.
Exactly.
And I think that oftentimes in treatment, I think patients come to us, people come to us, and they're complaining about things that they don't have, instead of looking at what they have. For instance, their health, their children's health, their marriage, their home, their comfort, their jobs. We take for granted so much, and I think gratitude is what keeps us rolling forward and gives us a sense of internal happiness.
Yeah, and I think you were right about taking things for granted versus being thankful for the little things that we have in our lives.
And because they're all little, and I think those are the important things.
They are important.
Another element of positive psychology has to do with compassion. Compassion for oneself and compassion for others. Compassion seems to be a buzzword in our world today. But when I was working on my book, The Science of Shame and Its Treatment, I discovered that there really isn't a universal definition of compassion. So I developed my own, looking at all the issues associated with what makes us compassionate. And what I find is compassion is broken down into two primary elements. One is attunement, being attuned not only with somebody else, but with ourselves. Having attunement means being locked in, okay, being part of the game. And the second aspect of compassion has to do with empathy. Having empathic understanding, not only for ourselves, which is really important, but being able to have empathy for another, putting ourselves in another person's situation, and letting ourselves feel what somebody else might feel without making judgments and critical evaluations about how people should or shouldn't feel. So compassion is really about empathy and attunement.
It is.
Thank you.
Very important.
I think so.
Yes. The last one for positive psychology is openness to experience and the ability to change. We need to have a fresh perspective. We need to have things to look forward to in order to keep us going. Sometimes we can get stuck in our old habits, and we need to have something to just kind of gear us up and let us go on with our lives, open to new experiences. This is so important. This keeps us fresh. This keeps us healthy. This keeps us vibrant and alive. And talking about changing and openness to experience, we will be having a special guest, Dr. Gregory Canillas. He is going to be talking about New Year's resolutions and goal setting. So keep tuned to Psyched.
Look around you. Everyone you see shares a deep and terrible secret that no one ever talks about. It is, in fact, one of the best kept secrets of all time, as universal and natural as the air we breathe, and just as pervasive. No one is immune to it. Look inside yourself. We listen to it instinctively, hold it closely, impetuously, and follow it without question every moment of our lives. The secret is our inner voice. The self-talk, the primal and silent internal communication that form alongside our psyche, feeding us constant messages that control our behavior. We hear it, but we can never see or feel or detect it in any other way. If you'd like to learn more about the relationship of early life abuse, trauma, neglect, violence, and its relationship to addiction, please pick up a copy of my new book, The Science of Shame and Its Treatment, available at the bookstore or online. Thank you very much.
Hi, welcome back to Psyched, and we are here in studio with our special guest, Dr. Gregory Canillas. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Terrific. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Good.
Glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful.
And we are going to be talking about New Year's resolution and making changes at the beginning of the year. And Dr. Canillas, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yeah. So I teach in a doctoral program downtown LA, the Chicago School, as well as Pepperdine University and National University. My areas of specialization are family systems, relationship issues, couples issues, children and families.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
So can you tell us why people traditionally make New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the year?
Well, the beginning of the year is associated with renewal and change. And so I think a lot of times people will decide that they want to do some things differently as the new year opens, and will decide to make those resolutions.
So, Dr. Canillas, so how long does it typically take to change a habit, and why does it take so long?
Generally, it takes about 6 weeks for people to change a habit. That's oftentimes why people fail, so to speak, because the length of time. I think most people think that it will take maybe a couple of days, a couple of weeks to make a change. But if we've been doing certain things for several years, and sometimes for people it's decades, many decades, that they are trying to change a habit, it takes at least the 6 weeks to make a significant change. So that's something I think people don't really realize or understand, and get really frustrated when there's not an immediate
Because
change.
they want instant results. They want to see something happening now, and that reinforces a change. But something that takes 6 weeks is really not reinforcing a change. I guess you have to reinforce it almost every day.
Exactly.
And so what recommendations do you have for our listening audience that they can do to keep on track?
I think one of the biggest things where I've seen success is having people write down the goal and to track it.
Perfect.
to make sure that they are, tracking on a daily basis. This is what I'm doing to follow up.
Yes.
Like one of the biggest, I think, New Year's resolutions for people is to lose weight.
Right.
And so
It's mine.
Yeah, it's most
Yeah,
people's,
it was
right?
mine last year too. So how many 6 weeks do I have to wait?
Yeah, well, if you're writing things down, I think, and you're making certain changes, like maybe lifestyle changes,
Right.
you're exercising more, you're eating better,
Right.
and you're tracking that, I think you have a better chance of success than if you're just kind of, just doing it day to day and not really following up with that.
Maybe I'll hire you as my personal trainer. Keep me on
Sounds
track.
good.
I know. Well, and then there is always the excuse making too. The people are like, oh, well, that's just too much work to even write it down. So maybe making it fun.
Sure.
Like putting a chart on the refrigerator with some, happy stickers or something, or some little gold stars, or when, kind of getting that kid-like ambition into doing the changes.
Yeah. And we use that token economy system with kids, children, adolescents. I use that quite a bit. Once the parent got into doing it and seeing change, then they were able to follow through with it better. But I like that. I think that works with adults as well.
Does it also help to encourage others to help us with our goals? In other words, tell a spouse or a partner, significant other, what we're attempting to do,
Absolutely.
and get encouragement from that.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
So
And
that we know
accountability.
that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Accountability also.
Yes. Yeah. So if we have support for the things that we're trying to change, I think you're right, Gerry. I think that makes a big difference.
So, so that my follow-up question, of course, was, what do we need to do to make our resolutions and changes stick? And so that really answers it, huh?
Yes.
It's that positive reinforcement. And don't expect changes overnight.
Absolutely.
Because I think for me, I like instant gratification, except when I was going to school. Then it takes forever, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I kind of want to get the gratification now and see change. But that's not realistic, is it?
No, it's not. And I think that's most people today. I think our society is like a microwave society. We want things done really quickly.
Right.
We're used to not waiting or delaying gratification.
For long-term goals, that's
Exactly.
right. We all want instant gratification.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't work that way. So you're right. I think that when you're trying to change, you have to think about how long you've maybe had this habit. If you had a bad habit for 30 or 40 years, it takes longer to change than if you're like an adolescent. That's one of the reasons why I like working with children and adolescents. You see the
Much
change
easier.
faster.
Do you see them
Exactly,
faster with the
exactly.
kids, and
Absolutely.
they're more on board with the need to change?
Yes, because they haven't had the habit as long.
Of course.
Right, exactly. So what elements keep people from changing?
I think a lot of times we sabotage ourselves.
Yes.
That
yes,
we
of course.
set ourselves up for failure. And some of that is related to the change process and people not understanding that and
Right.
not being willing to commit, as we were talking about a minute ago. Go ahead.
Oh, so when I'm talking to my patients, I say if your goals are unrealistic, like your goal is up here and reality is here,
Yes.
that gap is frustration,
Yes.
and it leads to a breakdown in performance. So bring the goals down
Absolutely.
to what you expect as something realistic.
Yes. Yeah. So make it doable. I agree with that.
And don't
Exactly.
challenge yourself right off the bat.
And baby step it. That's what I tell
Yes.
my clients too, because they get into this mindset of what they call future tripping. And it's just, they get overwhelmed. And it's like, I can't accomplish all of this, especially since, they've been in roles where they've kind of lost control of their
Yes.
lives.
Yes.
And then they need to take a step back, and then they're like going, wow, I need to catch up with my life. I need to do all these responsibilities that I was setting aside. So I have them sit down and just map things out. Just, one bubble with some tendrils coming out of it. Here is your goal. What are the miniature steps that you need to do to get to that goal? And then they start breathing easier. I see this relief come over their face. It's like, oh, okay, now I don't feel so strained.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I think we also will make the goals so big, and they're not always related to one another. I think if you're going to do something, do maybe one at a time, achieve some success, build your confidence, and move on to the next thing, versus doing like 10 things at once at the
Impossible.
beginning of the
It's
year.
it's impossible
Yes.
to accomplish that. And I think what we do is flood ourselves, overwhelm ourselves, if you will.
Yes.
And it's perfect. I love that, because what you're saying to our listeners is, don't be so grandiose.
Yeah.
Keep it rational, reasonable, and simple, and accomplish one small goal at a time.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Otherwise, you get overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed.
Me too.
Yeah, and I talk to my dissertation students about that too. Usually, when they start the dissertation process, they have these grand ideas, and then I'm like, no, you have to streamline it if you want to graduate, because that's way too big of a project for you to take on. I think it's the same with goal setting.
I can personalize that. You're so right. When I was doing my doctoral work 40 years ago, and I wanted to test the world, and my professors, and especially my chairman, said, keep it simple, Gerry. Keep it simple.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're going to lose the concept.
Yes.
And you'll be overwhelmed, and you won't accomplish. And that's true.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it works the same way.
Perfect.
Goal setting.
Love it.
Keep the end goal in sight
Yes.
and keep it simple, as Gerry said.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yes.
So, Dr. Canillas,
Yes.
it's been a pleasure having you here today as our first guest on Psyched.
Thank you.
As in our introductory episode, our introductory show. It's been a pleasure. I've learned something from listening to you today.
Good.
And I appreciate the work that you do out in the world and in the communities and working with kids. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything else you want to follow up with? One last statement to our listeners?
Sure. So I'm starting some classes that are goal-directed next month, the second week of February. And they're small group via telephone with no more than 5 members. And we'll go for about 6 weeks. 5 of those are with the group, and then 1 individual session with me.
Perfect.
You know,
So how can people reach you?
email's best, actually.
You want to give our folks, and we'll
Sure.
we'll flash it on the screen as well.
Okay.
Your email address?
It's drgjcanillas@aol.com, and that's spelled drgjcanillas@aol.com.
Perfect.
And your group is going to be for the general public or your students? The general public.
it's open to the general
Wonderful.
public.
Okay, and when can they register for that class?
Registration's open now.
Okay.
If you want more information, please just email me at the email address that I gave you, and I will give you more information.
It's been perfect. Thank you
exciting.
so much for
Thank
being
you.
here with us today.
Thank
You've
you.
made this an absolute pleasure.
Great, thank you. I enjoy being here.
A lot of success, Dr. Canillas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Canillas.
Thank you,
It's
too.
wonderful to have you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Addiction is the greatest public health crisis of our time and the #1 killer of young people in America today. At Beginnings Treatment Centers, we offer safe, modern, effective treatment for substance abuse and addiction. Minutes from the beach in beautiful Orange County, California, Beginnings offers comfortable surroundings, private chefs, and a dedicated clinical staff. Beginnings makes recovery possible for you and for your loved ones. Don't wait until it's too late. Call 800-387-6907 right now for a free confidential assessment.
I am gilded pelvic bones cracking, a painful lover's alchemy blossoming in my spine, and a trickle dichotomy, most magnificent, especially when I am spread open beneath you, peculiar honeysuckle that you are, deep, bloody, brick-colored gardens. And I am a fistful of seeds, ready to seep the kneading in, hungry, opportunistic palms fighting for salt. I have an affection for the
It's my pleasure and opportunity to present to you my new book, The Science of Shame and Its Treatment. It's on early life trauma, abuse, neglect, and violence, and how the brain becomes addicted to chemicals and how it affects our sense of self-esteem and self-worth. It's available at a bookstore near you.
And thank you to our sponsors, Therapy Cable and Beginnings Treatment Centers. Hi, we're back with our special guest, Michael Espinach, also known as Breatherrr. Exciting performance. I wish you could have been here. He was excellent. Michael, hi, how are you?
I'm great.
Yeah, you did excellent, excellent. So I want to know kind of what was the creative process behind this performance?
So with all the albums, I try to keep it as a sort of as a psychedelic experience. So try to keep it as dynamic as possible. And ultimately, it's about extremes of ecstasy and catharsis and nuanced aspects of all of that too. So as far as like the story behind everything, it's trying to draw a parallel between like relationships and also a synthetic versus, real life. So the experience of both and how both of them are very important to kind of draw attention to the other.
Right. I know it's a really interesting eclectic mix of jazz and industrial and ambient and what would you call it, post-psychedelic, correct? Yeah, unbelievable. It was just, it carried me away, and I could see the rest of the audience too. Just, you take them with you on the story. So how do you usually write your music? What's the process? Because there's so many steps. You've got your laptop and all your pedals and everything else. So how does that process go?
So with some of it, it's usually just a riff will happen, or it'll be something as far as just messing with gear and coming across a sound. And sometimes a whole song will be based off of that one sound, or it could be creating a drum pattern. And with drum patterns, I make them on an iPad app. I do a lot of my production on a software called Ableton. So the process of it is really just me sitting at my laptop and recording guitar into it. And as far as the story of everything and really how everything comes together is through personal experience. So with this most recent album, Almond Noir, some of the songs were written 3 years ago as just guitar demos. And I just knew that they wouldn't fit with the first album. And luckily, I started growing into what I was doing. So those songs had more of a voice. I had more interesting things to do with them. So by the time the album is ready to go, it's really about fitting everything together sequentially so that the story is dynamic, it makes sense, and it keeps you on your toes. Because a lot of things, like life isn't predictable, so it's kind of about keeping that excitement going.
Yeah, and it's not linear either, right? I mean, there was so many surprises in your performance this evening. I loved it because I just never knew where you were going to go. There was no predictability to it whatsoever, and I really thought that was fresh and exciting, and it was beautiful. Now, you've got a bachelor's in Eastern philosophy, right? Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that and how that kind of blends into your creative process in your music?
I think it was really being in college and exploring different belief systems and just existential ways of looking at life. And when I found out about Buddhism and what it meant, it made a lot of sense. And just based off of certain spiritual experiences that I had. And I wouldn't say that I necessarily subscribe to any belief system. I think they all have something interesting to say, but with Buddhism, or a lot of Eastern philosophies, there's a lot of inward salvation that happens. So, opposed to Western ideas of salvation, which is external, playing with those internal forms and methods of figuring things out, I think that's really, really important. And I think that affected my life, so it affected my music.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's just introspective. And it's just the yin and the yang, really. So it's beautiful. So tell us a little bit about your new album, Almond Noir. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Almond Noir, it was written over a year. Well, some of it was written a few years ago, and then the actual process of recording it took 11 months. And really, it's about drawing parallels between certain things. Mostly it's about relationships, both with other people, with a chemical-based way of living, and ultimately a relationship with the self. So they all kind of interact with each other in a similar way. So with the album, it's about kind of noticing a routine, wanting to break free of that, but wanting to break free of your routine is about kind of going out on a limb and trying something new. So with going out on a limb, there's fear in that. and getting involved and getting deeper into something, there's more to lose, so to speak. So it's kind of about that. It's about kind of gambling with certain things and ultimately finding out what it is that it's ultimately about coming to peace with yourself, and then everything else kind of falls into place.
And can you tell us a little bit about your videos and and where you can find, or the audience can find you, and get into like live performances, get into your videos? I know I saw a few of them on YouTube. The videography was gorgeous, and that I love the process of that.
Well, thanks. Yeah, with the music videos, it's really about. I just think of the most insane idea that I haven't seen yet, and I want to make it something that's somewhat realistic. I think that's what's super bizarre about real life, and what makes things surreal isn't about these really fantastical things that happen. It's really just these weird alterations that they could happen, but you never thought you would see it. So with Sean Schreier, the newest album, our song, I should say, the whole song is really about this lost love and really putting everything into that love. So the lyrics refer to different bodily fluids, and it's kind of about that. It's about everything that you have and missing that connection. So with the video, I can't really say what happens, like everybody should watch what happens, but it's super graphic just because I want people to wonder, why did he do that?
It's very eye-catching, yeah. I noticed that. Yeah. So where can people see you next or get in contact with you?
The best way is breatherrr.bandcamp.com. So my name is Breatherrr with 3 R's at the end, BREATHERRR. So you can find me on Facebook, iTunes, Spotify, Google. Email me at breatherrr999@gmail.com. I'm all over the place. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having an interview with us on Psyched, and unbelievable performance. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Gerry Fishkin, and on behalf of my co-host, Julianne Goode, I want to thank each of you for joining us on our first episode of Psyched. I also want to thank our in-studio guest, Dr. Gregory Canillas, and our musical guest, Michael Espinach, for providing such great entertainment tonight. If we have met the if test, that is, if we're interesting, informative, and fun, I encourage you to tune in to our next episode of Psyched on therapycable.com network. Finally, if you're interested in becoming an in-studio guest or a musical guest, but not limited to music, I encourage you to contact us at therapycable.com or through our website. On the rolling credits, you will see at the end of the show. Again, thank you so much for joining us on our first episode of Psyched, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.